Welcome to another episode of Design to Convert. I am very excited for this one. We're going to get really deep on the intricacies of running and scaling Facebook ads. My guest today is Charlie, the founder of Disruptor School. Charlie is one of the top 100 Facebook advertisers, driven over $1 billion in revenue. That's a billion with a B. He teaches marketers and businesses how to confidently profit from Facebook ads through a unique combination of strategic thinking, problem solving, amazing expertise in the game. And then one of the things that I really love about Charlie is he's got a very unique philosophy on what KPIs to look out for when you're running and scaling Facebook ads. So Charlie, thank you so much for joining me today on Design to Convert.
Thanks so much for having me, man. This is going to be a lot of fun. You know, we met on a rooftop in Vegas, and here we are. Like, this is great. I really appreciate it. And what a lovely intro of making people think that they should have anything to trust when it comes to just some random stranger on the internet. This is going to be great. No, for real. I'm super excited. This will be great. I hope to bend some minds and make the world a little bit easier and make money happen. This will be fun.
Let's do it, man. I love it. No, this is to give the audience a little bit of context on how Charlie and I met. We were at Shop Talk at the same time in Las Vegas, which at the time of recording was last week. And we bumped into each other at, I think it was like a Tido, like rooftop bar event. It was really cool. And we talked for quite a bit about, your experience in the DTC space, and then like we went really deep on like, what you think about kind of the state of the union as far as like running ads. Yeah. And I think that's like we got really deep on some of the tactics, some of the learnings that you have for all the clients that you manage now. So I'm really excited to kind of pull that out and share that with the audience today. But first, I think it'd be great if we started at the beginning. Like, how did you get in the game? Like, what's your story?
Yeah, so I mean, before I got into advertising, I was a touring musician and Sirius XM radio personality, and then Hulk Hogan's sex tape ruined my radio career, and I fled 2,500 miles to basically get sober. Ended up at like a $10 an hour job at an ad agency, got fired in 3 months, started my own agency, won an episode of the reality show The Pitch, where we got business from 100 Flowers, was fired by my business partner as soon as the ink was laid on the paper before it dried, started another agency, got fired by my biggest client, who is still a good friend because I put $100 into Facebook ads. And he's like, look, dude, I put $100 into Facebook. It does more than I pay you $2,000 a month for organic growth hacking. This was like late 2012, early 2013. And so I licked my wounds, had some carbohydrate therapy, dropped my credit card into Facebook, started promoting my band, got a job at an agency pushing Jamba Juice and Viking River Cruises, got a job at another place doing stuff with celebrities like Jay and Silent Bob and Danny Trejo. And within 9 months of spending my first real money on Facebook ads, I got the role of supervisor at Omnicom for the LA office, overseeing all of their performance media for paid social. So like my direct clients were like CBS and Nissan, working with Activision and Apple and Levi's. And at the time, because I'd been running Facebook ads for 9 months, I had seniority over basically everybody. And nobody wanted to run Facebook because it was this weird thing that was like a bad version of Google Display. And so everybody was great at Yahoo Gemini and email and stuff like that. And it's just like, cool. But I had 7-figure daily budgets and no playbook and no boss. And I loved it. And from there, I basically just started to get to run a bunch of tests, do a bunch of things. And you spend $1 million a day for an evil international conglomerate ad agency, and then eventually work your way through other agencies, go vendor side, brand side. You learn a lot. And, over the last 5 or 6 years, I've been really focusing on teaching people all the stuff that I've learned. And that has given me a great opportunity to not only pass on what I've learned, but I think also there's one thing to be successful because you work with clients who don't need you, and you get into this space during a bull market. And then you try to sell your ability to be the best at everything to other folks. And to be fair, there's a lot of really insecure, like fake alpha white dudes that have built an entire career off of taking advantage of people, off of being lucky in the right place at the right time and having good friends and landing clients who don't need them. And I'm here to basically be an alternative to that, because I'm genuinely creating opportunity and teaching people what works. Because a lot of those folks disagree with me publicly and then basically quote me several years later. And they've been doing that for the better part of a decade. And I, used to get my feelings hurt by it. And now I find it as a point of pride to see all these folks that blocked me on Twitter 3 years ago basically quoting me and citing what they blocked me for saying as their new biggest ideas. And in a very short window, to not sound like a complete narcissist, that's kind of where I'm at. But like, for what it's worth, the receipts back it up, and my focus isn't to try to be the biggest London broil on the counter. My point here is, how do we make Facebook easy so that you can go about working on the business instead of in the business? And the honest truth is, if you're not confidently scaling every month, and if you're spending more than like an hour a week on your Facebook ad account, and you still think that the path is to undermine the algorithm and to hack it and to promote 5 different products or use audiences or value silly things like ROAS and other stuff, like, there is such a bigger world where you can have less stress and more success and provide opportunities to create jobs for other people. Like, that should be our focus. So I'm a small cog in the wheel of basically trying to help that happen. And because of my ability to do that, I've been able to have a lot of doors opened to me in the years, and I've learned a lot of things from a lot of really powerful women and men in the industry. And it's not just hiring, it's not just being in the room with people that don't need you. I'm currently on my 4th business in the last 5 years that we've taken from a low 7-figure business to a 9-figure run rate in the D2C space. I've also done with SaaS businesses and lead gen agencies. And it's exciting to have a brand in my women's clothing business right now. Less than 2 years ago was doing $50K a month. We do $1 million a week. We're going to double that or triple that by the end of the year. And that is by no means the first time, and even the last 2 years that I've done that. And there's absolutely no reason anybody else can't make that happen. So any chance I get to rock the boat a little bit and help people out, I will take eagerly.
So right off the bat, I love the energy and I love the intensity that you approach the space and then like your craft. And also just the, you and I talk. I don't even know how long we talked on that rooftop, but
it was a while. We had a good
time. It was, yeah, oh yeah, and it was awesome. And I think one of the things that I walked away from that conversation was, this is someone that, through the energy, through all the intensity, you have like a very, very deep desire to help people see what is possible using these tools, and actually like letting the tools work for you. Before we like dive into that deeply, I have to ask, tell us a little bit about the band that you're with. Like, what instrument did you play? Like, what was the setup there?
Sure. So I've been a for-hire touring like punk rock bass player for 20 years. And I've always been the frontman of my own like rock and roll bands. So like, I've got band practice tonight. Like, I've got headlining gigs like next week. Like, it is still something that I do. You see, I've got tattoos. I've got music on my arm right there. Like, it is a thing. Like, I don't know if you can see it, but I've got a fridge. It just looks like we have to slide the camera over. It's just a Marshall amp that's a fridge. Like, this
You're
is
about that life. Yeah, like, that's sick. Yeah.
This is quite literally who I am.
Stocked. Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's stocked with Liquid Death and Rancho right now. Rancho. And so, yeah, but the point is, that there's a bunch of bands nobody ever cares about, and they've been a lot of fun. But I've had the opportunity of living in a van and spending weeks on the road and playing festivals, and I've been on stage where there's 3 people in the room, and I've been on stage where there's 3,000 crazy people out underneath the baking sun. Like, it's a fun thing. So current band is called Dirty Cakes, and we have a good time, man. It's just Fun, heavy songs about drugs and fucking pinch of Satan.
That's awesome, man. We're gonna have to link to your band stuff. You're gonna have to send me the links so we can put them in the show notes.
Absolutely.
So you're at this point in life where you're in this band, and then you're like, okay, like through a series of twists and turns, you find Facebook ads, and then not long after, you're spending $1 million a day. Walk us through the journey of like running your very first ad, and tell us what your first ad is if you remember it, all the way to getting to a point where you're managing $1 million of budget per day.
Yeah, I mean, I think my first ads were either engagement or like page-like ads for my band. And this was like 2012, 2013. So like, this is pre-pixel. There was no such thing as a conversion objective. Like, this is way before the algorithm existed. Like CPMs were like $1.
On the high side, right?
Yeah,
like
that was on the high side.
Yeah.
And that's back when Facebook told you how much an interest group added to your CPMs and all these fun things. And so I was just basically like, I went online and I just looked around, and, you know, I needed a gig. I needed some money, you know, and I found some podunk agency in Santa Monica that was doing some decent stuff, that had gone through acquisitions and all sorts of other things. And they had Jamba Juice that was trying to spend money and figure stuff out. And at the time, I knew how to use Facebook ads, so I was the most experienced person available for the role. And, you know, then it got to a place of me doing that for some anti-smoking stuff with Carrie Gaynor Method and Jay and Silent Bob and Danny Trejo, which was fun because we got them all verified on Instagram once for a movie that was coming out with Robert Rodriguez. And it was like, he was the cast of the movie. So we did it all. And then I slipped my band in. And also my buddy Greg from the Circle Jerks, and my buddy Ernie, who plays guitar in Body Count. And so like, this was supposed to be a 9-person list, and 12 people got verified like the next day. And like, to this day, my buddy Greg, guitar player from Circle Jerks and Bad Religion and a bunch of other fun things, was like, you know, my daughter doesn't really care about me being a rock star. She doesn't really think I'm cool or whatever, but I got verified on Instagram, and like, she told all of her friends. And it was like, that was cool. That was cool. So, you know, it was doing all of that stuff. And then one day, just out of the blue, I was like looking on stuff, and Omnicom had put up this job interview. And it was like, I went from making $200 a week to a $75,000 a year, like salary gig. And I didn't even know how to use Microsoft Outlook. Like, I showed up in a suit that I bought at H&M the day before. I got the gig because you put me in a room, I'm going to charm some people. And
which is, just for the people listening and watching, you talk to so many people. Like, you and I had like a near 2-hour long conversation, but the entire time people were coming up to you, and you had like talked to just about everybody at this like 200, 300 person event, which is kind of insane. So
yeah, I think
Charlie can charm people.
Yeah. I'll work a room. You know, massive insecurities built in some skills and social like engagements. And yeah, like, I got that job, and like, the funny thing is, I had no idea like what to do for an office job. Like, I showed up late most days. I stayed till like the wee hours of the morning. I was showing up in like band t-shirts, like baseball tees, pearl snaps, torn jeans, like cowboy boots, like hats. And like, I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. And I think they knew on day 2 or 3 that I was a bad hire, but it took like 9 months to get me out of the building. And I got my boss's job basically at the building next door, which is what you do in the advertising world. And it was a lot of fun, you know? And I think the really interesting thing was I got to learn the power of what social ads could do. So, you know, paid social could do. Because I think the biggest light bulb moment for me was, one of my clients was Nissan. And part of Nissan's contract was that they had to do an alpha every 3 months. They do 4 a year, which basically meant you had to be on the cutting edge of technology, doing brand new tests of new tech and new products every 3 months. And I had like 10 days to launch this alpha. And I had been on the job for like 2.5 months, and I basically had not launched one. I had no idea what to do. And I was just like, okay, just kept kicking that can down the river. And then it was like, well, we got to figure it out. And the Facebook rep came. Now, there was one rep for everybody in Facebook west of Chicago. Because again, it was like 2013. Like nobody cared about Facebook. And he was like, he said, hey, we have this new tech. We need somebody to sign on board with it. And I said, hey, I need an alpha. Like, can we make it work? And he's like, well, I don't know. This seems like, I don't know how we're going to do this for a car company that needs to spend, we need a 7-figure budget. And I'm like, well, I need to spend like a couple $1 million on something in like the next 10 days. And he's like, okay. And it was weird. And he was like, so we have this technology where basically if somebody clicks a couple of buttons where they say it's okay, we'll give the person that put up the ad like their first name, last name, email address, and phone number. And it was a lead gen ad, but nobody had ever done lead gen ads. And so my bright idea in the shower, basically the next day where all good ideas come, was just like, what if I used a tier 1, like Nissan USA budget to get people's information to tier 3 dealerships to set up test drives to the 2014 Nissan Sentra? Which is basically, I had a square peg in a round hole, and if I didn't force it in there, I was going to get fired. And so I was just like, this is the only thing I can think of. And as a result of that, like, I think it cost me $50 to get a lead. 1 out of 2 people that signed up for a test drive bought a $25,000 car. So if you're doing the math,
that's amazing.
X ROAS, which again, like, it's completely
what's so wild is that I distinctly remember the 2014 Sentra. That was about to be my very first car. And I remember filling out, no, I didn't fill it out. My dad filled it out. He filled out a form. He was like, okay, we got to go do this test drive. And we drove the car. I ended up getting a Golf. But like, that's so crazy that you were behind that. Like, that's so freaking
yeah, there you go. And that was the very first lead gen. Like, nobody had done lead gen campaigns before that. I was like one of the first handful of people to ever launch one. And as a result, basically every car company got that case study and was doing it within like 3 to 6 months. And I was like, oh, we can change the world. Like, this is wild. And I mean, hey, look, I have hundreds of misses, but there's a few other wins like that. DPA ads is another win like that, where I was working with Macy's, and we had to pay this Australian data entry agency like 50,000. Like, we had to pay them an ungodly amount of money to put 50,000 items into an Excel spreadsheet. The entire product catalog of Macy's had to be manually entered because there was no such thing as a product catalog. So dynamic product ads in the alpha of that, like, there was no catalog. So nobody had any idea if this would even work. And so we paid these kids in Australia must have made a couple $1 million in like 4 or 5 months, because I know we paid them way too much money. And we were not the only ones. And they were the only people in the world they were the only ones that had this contract. Great grift. And we ended up launching DPA ads and figuring that out. And now, like, I don't know a single person that's like, if you have a store with over 5 products, you should probably be at least trying DPA ads. And like, yeah, like, there's just weird stuff like that. I was also on the team that helped put together the Power 5. So I was there for broad targeting, basically advanced matching, which is the brain behind broad targeting, dynamic creative, a couple of CBO, which I remember it was end of days when they said that every ad account was going to only have CBO as the option, and still, like, ABO is a choice. It's a choice nobody should make, but it's still a choice that, like, people can have. And yeah, it's been wild just to be around for so long. And I was lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time with the right people that were desperate enough to make a bad decision by hiring me, and I made the most of it. What can I say? Like, it was a beautiful thing. And I went from being basically unemployable a couple of years before that, and having my parents more or less pay my bills and move to LA to, I mean, hey, look, I bought a house in LA. I paid for my wedding in cash. In the summer, I'm going to buy a brownstone in Chelsea. Like, anybody can do this. Like, I was a junkie touring musician, and now I'm buying a place in Manhattan. It is stupid. Like, it is objectively dumb. And there's no reason that, like, I'm special. Like, I got a couple of things that I do. You know, I'm a different than the average bear on a couple of things, but like, there's no reason anybody can't see anything close to that. It's all about just framing things right.
That hits home for me. So my own journey, which I've never talked about on the pod, you go back to 2017 and I'm flat broke, like less than broke, like in debt, no prospects, no skills, get a break at a e-com platform startup and like learn the ropes. And I remember like there would be days where I'd be like, okay, I can either buy food or I can put gas in my car and like get to work, or I'm like walking to work and it's a long, you know, and now like life, I mean, I'm not at the point where I'm buying brownstones in Chelsea yet, but
but dude, we met on a rooftop in Vegas.
Right. So like, life is like completely transformed. Like I'm just like a kid from Missouri. And I think that's what's so amazing about like DTC, not just like running your own brand, but every aspect of this ecosystem. There is a path for anybody, regardless of skill, background, the hardships or the privileges in life. Like anyone can make it. And that's one of the reasons why like I stay in it. Cause I know sometimes it gets toxic, and I want to talk to you about that a little bit later, but, even through all the toxicity, when you get back to the root of like why we're in the game, like this is a life-changing industry for anybody.
Yeah.
So let's jump ahead a little bit, and talk to me through that moment of when you're running ads and you're pushing millions of dollars in a single day. Like, what does it feel like when you see the number go from, you know, it's one thing to spend like $500 or $1,000 in a day, but what's it like to spend $1 million? Like, people want to make $1 million, but you're spending it on ads. What does that feel like?
It's terrifying. And like, I know a lot of people that are like, well, you know, I spend millions of dollars a day. My agency handles a bunch of clients. Okay, so like you've hired people that collectively have gotten there. Like I've hit that many zeros. And it was like a daily, like I lost sleep. Like I made a mistake on a clerical error because I wanted to like go get dinner, and it was a $50,000 problem. Like I remember, like I got one of the reasons I left that early job where I was working with Nissan and CBS and all them is I was doing the launch for like Code Black and like the Colbert taking over the Late Show and stuff like that. And Schitt's Creek season 2, I remember that one pretty vividly. And fun fact, the ad to launch season 2 of Schitt's Creek was the first episode. It was a 24-minute video ad, and it was just straight the whole episode. That was their ad, and it worked. I mean, maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. I don't know. They didn't blow up till Netflix, but it was fun. Anyway, like there, I was trying to do a good job. We promised them we're going to spend $1 million to get this thing done. I got it done for $800,000. Congratulations, you saved the client 200 G's. Well, no, like we make a 20% commission on ad spend. We're a bank. And I did that for 5 days in a row. So I basically cost nearly 3 times my annual salary in 1 week in blown commissions. And like it became this really weird spot of being so stressed about being exact. And then also realizing that your job was not to do good work. And to be fair, like that's still really at the heart of most agencies and people that I talk to is their motivation has nothing to do with the success of the business. It's if the people that you're working with get rewarded by commission on ad spend or other performance-based metrics where they try to take as much credit for everybody else's work as possible, like ROAS or sales volume, then like their motivation is to be as dishonest with you as they possibly can to line their bank. And I've been fired from jobs for not being good at the dishonesty part and being really good at the performance part. And you feel like, well, that'd be a good thing, but it's not. And be fair, like I understand too, it wasn't just that we lost the commission. It was also that the person at CBS who convinced their boss to spend $1 million has to go back and say, I know I asked for $1 million. We got it done with 800 grand. So now they look bad for asking for too much money. And so it's just like this trickle of just like so many, like, I just realized like this entire other side of things that I think most people aren't ever exposed to. But yeah, I lost sleep. I like, you know, waking up at 3:00 in the morning to check the pacing, and it's terrifying until you get to a place of being like fatalistic, of just like, well, if it screws up, there's nothing I can do. And if it goes well, nobody cares. So ultimately, my job is meaningless, and I'm wildly underpaid for making way too much money to basically spend like half an hour on Facebook. Because
It's.
by the way,
did you
that
ever feel
$1
like
million
you
ad
made
spend,
other-
yeah, that $1 million ad spend was like, it took me 30 minutes to set it up, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It was a $200,000 commission.
Did you ever feel like you got tired of making other people really rich?
Yeah. And that's around like 2017, 2018, 2019, when I was on like my second or third D2C brand, where I had taken them from 5 million, 12 million to like 50 or 100. It really started to hit me. And then like right around the beginning of COVID, I was working with a SaaS company, and I got them from $60 customer acquisition to like a $12. I got them from 3,000 a day to 50,000 a day. And we realized what we were really trying to do is look good to the bank, and we need to save some money for like legal fees. So we decided, let's improve EBITDA by 12 million a year by just cutting Facebook spend by 33,000 a day. Like overnight, made an extra $12 million earnings before tax. Like, and I was paid, you know, it's not a 6-figure salary, but that's a drop in the bucket. And I heard this interview from Hank Azaria. I don't know if you're familiar with Hank Azaria, but he's the voice of so many of the characters on The Simpsons. And I think I told you this story in Vegas. I may or may not have. I talked to like 1,000 people, so forgive me if I did. But Hank Azaria is like the voice of one out of every 4 characters on The Simpsons. And he goes into a vocal booth for like 2 weeks a year. Let's say he makes $5 million. And you're like, wow, he makes $5 million for sitting in a vocal booth for like 2 weeks, working like part-time. He says, I'm like wildly overpaid. But also, like, if it's a $5 billion company and he's 1/4 of the cast, he's criminally underpaid for his contribution to that business. And I realized that was exactly what I was doing. Like, no media buyer can legitimately be paid what they're worth. And I had helped drive maybe $500 million in revenue in like 3-4 years. And I think I was making around 100K. And that's when I decided that like I was fed up and I wanted to bet on myself. And I got a couple equity deals, and I started really pushing my school. And what I realized was giving other people the opportunity to do that for themselves, teaching people how to fish instead of being an abused fisherman, made me feel so much better about myself. And now I basically have to spend every single day helping people reach that level of success. And man, I've been in a great mood, like pretty much all the time. Like I can't be terribly upset. Like my days are spent making people happy and providing opportunity, creating jobs, and giving smiles on people's faces. Like, how can you be upset when that's what you do all day?
That's amazing, man. So let's actually fast forward into what you're doing now and dive into some of the tactical stuff. For those of you who are just listening to the audio of this and not seeing the video, Charlie's actually wearing a shirt right now that says "fuck ROAS."
It's true.
I'm going to say it one more time. It's a shirt that says "fuck ROAS."
Available at the merch store and disruptorschool.com.
Let's go. So I have to. So you know, we talk a lot about KPIs, ROAS, MER, metrics, LTV, all this shit, right? So walk us through why that's on your shirt, why you believe that.
Yeah. So number one, I think, unfortunately, ROAS is a metric that people look at as something other than incredibly insulting. I don't think that there are very few things that are more disrespectful to bring up in a business relationship than the concept of ROAS. And there's a lot of people that are like, what are you talking about? And so let me break it down. ROAS at its core was designed, is a metric made up by advertising industry folks in the beginning of digital advertising, 30 years ago, to try to help take credit for work. And to be fair, I'm very glad that they did. Otherwise, we probably may or may not have this conversation today. So to the women and men that made it happen, thank you. But if we break it down, now a lot of people say, well, ROAS is like profit margin. It's revenue divided by ad spend. How much money you made today? Well, that is objectively false. So let's break it down. We say ROAS is really the average order value of sales that are attributed to the spend that you made today, divided by how much you spent today. So there's a couple things in there. Number one, average order value. I made X amount of money on X amount of sales. Each sale is worth about X amount of dollars. We can't control that. If you're running a 7-Eleven, you have no idea if someone's going to come in there and pay 25 cents for a stick of Bazooka Joe, or I don't know if they sell Bazooka Joe anymore. But the point is, or like somebody could also be drunk and spend like $300 on like ice cream and like beer. Like you have no control over what somebody does in your store. So AOV, which is effectively the numerator, half of the equation that makes the top of this fraction, is something we have no control over. So in the conversation of data is only as useful as it is actionable, half of one of the two numbers in the fraction we have zero control over. Which
I'm going to actually interject really quickly and say, what do you say to the folks that say, oh, like you can do post-purchase upsells in your checkout flow, you can do bundling like within the order, like when you landing pages, for example, to drive AOV up, like how does that play into the philosophy of you don't actually have control over AOV?
Well, yeah, you can't force them to take it.
That's fair.
So somebody can take $50 or they can take $300 of upsells. Awesome. But you have no idea someone's going to spend $10 or $350.
Sure.
And now maybe you just say, well, on average across all my sales, people do this. Sure. But we've all had a day where like your ROAS was dumb. Like it was super high because some clown comes in and drops like $500 when everybody else is dropping $200. We've all had that. That happens. Okay. So now you're saying, all right, so it's a data point where it's only that part of the data point I'm going to extrapolate out over a very long period of time to kind of round out the curves. Okay. So that means that at best, it's only applicable at a very long trend analysis. Fair enough. Now, the other side of it is attributed sales. So it's attribution, which is also basically as real as like the tooth fairy. The idea that you could say that a sale is because of an ad is ludicrous. Like the average customer journey, people say, well, my customer journey is about 3 days. Wrong. It's decades. And like, what are you talking about? Like, I bought this Liquid Death. Now, fun fact is, I've actually been drinking things for about 39 years. And I've bought things at the store, and I've seen, water fountains. And, the idea of whether I want to spend money on something and what's valuable to me, like the thing that gets me to actually want to buy this Liquid Death can, that decision-making process is far longer than seeing an ad. And ultimately, too, we can even break it down far more simply in saying, well, somebody saw a Facebook ad. Okay, they clicked on that ad. Let's assume that you've just introduced a concept of like, you've invented shoes and nobody knew they had feet before. So you're brand new. All right, cool. So like, I mean, this is how absurd the idea of attribution is. Like, it only works if you have a completely brand new product for a problem that nobody ever knew existed that you create a solution for. So it's basically impossible. But let's say you invented shoes and nobody knew they had feet, so you can take credit that somebody saw your ad. Got it. They see your Facebook ad. Maybe they click on it. Maybe they don't. They see another one a few days later. They click on that. They go to your webpage. Okay. Maybe they poke around for a little bit. Now they're in a retargeting audience. If you're, please tell me you're not using retargeting, but let's say if you believe in attribution and ROAS, you're probably still believing that audiences matter on Facebook. So now they're in a retargeting audience and somebody maybe clicks there. They go back to the web page. They're like, okay, this is cool. Oh, look, if I spin the wheel, I'm going to get 15% off. So they spin the wheel and they get the 15% off because that's they win, because that's the only thing that happens no matter how many times you spin that wheel. And then like, cool, I get the email and you get a code in your email and you open it up and you're like, all right, this is cool. I'm not ready right now for whatever reason. It's like bedtime, or I'm, the light turned green, or like, like I have to get out of the bathroom, or like somebody called my name in this business meeting, so I have to look up and look like I'm paying attention. And then the next day, like, okay, what was that thing? And I Google it. And so then I like click on that ad and I'm like, oh, I got that code. So I go back to my email, I open up that code, and then I go to the website and I buy. Now, and that completely realistic thing that probably most transactions are probably something that looks like that. Google, email, and Facebook are going to get credit for the sale. Fun fact, your fulfillment team and your finance team does not agree with the fact that 3 sales occurred. So now you're going to try to say, well, how much credit does each thing get? The problem is you and I are going to buy based on completely different journeys, because you might say, well, I saw that Facebook ad and I'm ready to buy. And so you click on that ad and you buy it. Now, maybe that happened because, let's say, for instance, you knew that you had feet and you might have even bought a pair of shoes before. You might have even been in the market for shoes. Maybe you abandoned cart on 3 other shoe companies in the last week. Like when I was running New Balance, for instance, not like CEO, like the ads. Like I wasn't like CEO of New Balance. People say a lot of things on the internet. Let me not take credit for that. At the beginning of advanced matching, we noticed that 2/3 of every dollar that we spent, where it was the first impression from us, was to somebody that had abandoned cart on a similar product. We were selling this. We had this one ad of red trainers that was super popular. 2/3 of the dollars spent on that red trainer ad that was first impression for us was somebody that had abandoned cart at Saucony, Nike, Reebok, Converse, and I can't remember the other one. Maybe Vans or something else. It has to be like 5 brands or else Facebook won't give you the information. I forgot what it was. But the point is, that person was already bottom funnel. Now they were top funnel for us. So you had basically probably already gone into a couple Foot Lockers in person, because Facebook also knows where you are, and had clicked on a couple of ads. So you showed that you liked that content. Then they showed you that red sneaker ad. So then, well, that ad as a cold prospecting gets the sale. So its ROAS is crazy. Like, man, our prospecting is killing it today. Like, no, your prospecting ad just happened to be good enough to hit somebody else that was interested at the bottom of the funnel, but there's cold prospecting for you. So my point is, the concept of attribution is an impossible Sudoku puzzle that is like 20,000 layers deep on, like it's 4D chess, but it's like 20,000 D chess, and every single person is different, and it changes for every transaction every single day. So it's an impossible puzzle to solve. So now we're saying, okay, well, AOV is something we can't control. The attributed revenue, the actual number, the AOV is transaction volume, which we know, and the revenue from that sale. So, well, actually, now we don't know how many sales were driven by this click, and we can't control the revenue. So we don't know the attributed revenue or sales volume or AOV, and we're going to divide that by how much we spent. Okay, well, we do objectively know how much we spent. That we know. But now is it ROAS per ad, or per ad set, or per campaign? If that information is going to be actionable, that means that you're now going to make a decision off of it. But if you have a funnel, is the prospecting ad good, or was it just you were in the market for red trainers today? So now the only action you'll be able to take off of that is one where you have no idea the impact of it. So the concept of ROAS is basically something you can't control, measured but indexed against something that is completely fictitious, divided by a number that is ultimately broken up so that you can take an action that you have no idea how to measure the impact of, all to basically try to say, we did a good job, so give us more money because this is what I did. And so it's a completely self-fulfilling or self-serving metric of a marketer's ego to define their self-worth, because they're not capable of saying, when you spend money with us, you generate more volume of transactions or greater revenue, greater profit margin, spending money with us and the strategy we're moving forward, ultimately pushing forward your business objective for your business and your brand. Because that business objective might be profit margin. It might be market share growth. It might be revenue growth. There could be a million things going on. And that business objective might change quarter to quarter. So if your marketer or the person spending money for you is defining their success by how much credit for everybody else's work they can take, because also the reason that ad worked is because also the landing page and the emails that worked in and the product development and the customer service and the creative team. So the concept here is, how much credit for everybody else's work can I take based off of a number we can't control, indexed against a completely fictitious thing, divided by spend so that I can take an action that I have no confidence in? My point to that is, objectively speaking, you can't say that with a straight face and then also say, this means I'm good at my job. And anybody who disagrees with that, like, you're welcome to your opinion, but I've yet to hear somebody say, to give me a rational decision on the thought process of why putting their ego over the business objectives for the person spending the money is good for the people spending the money. Like, I've never seen that. I've been hounding this for 5 years. I've yet to hear one rational conversation. And then people say, well, okay, ROAS, but MER, we'll go with that. Well, MER is just ROAS, but one level up. So it's the same level of dumb lies and ego, but just one tier up. And so now you're starting to see people talk about contribution margin, but they're still trying to do the same thing of how much credit do I deserve? Like, there's a guy out there that, he's pushing this contribution margin thing pretty hard. And I saw him put out a study from his agency and was like, well, this is the contribution of each ad. But you have no control over what ad gets spent or where in the funnel that ad goes. And also, I've helped a lot of my students are former clients of his, and we've helped fix their ad accounts and their business after all the damage that they've done. And there's no ability to actually extrapolate what's happening, because they're so complex that you've got 20 things all competing with each other. So even if you're able to understand the contribution margin by some false measurement of one ad, that doesn't mean you can take any informed action. And at the end of the day, if I don't have the information to make an informed decision to push business objectives forward by making an investment or management decision, I'm useless. And so anybody that values these types of things, as far as I'm concerned, has the opportunity to no longer be useless if they start to change the way that they think. And so for those reasons, Shark Tank, I'm out, or whatever. But yeah, fuck ROAS. And if you tell me that that's how you're valuable, I know that A, either you have no concept of how digital marketing works and how banking functions, or B, you do and you don't care, in which case you're an asshole. So either you're ignorant or you're an asshole. And if you're ignorant, that's great. That's an opportunity to learn. Ignorant is not like a pejorative. I'm ignorant on a whole bunch of shit. Tell me where I'm wrong so I can get better. But if I know that I'm wrong and I still push that agenda, then I'm an asshole.
It's probably aligned to an incentive that they have, right? They're incentivized to push the. So one of the things that pulling out from the arc of okay, you have the philosophy of fuck ROAS. You went into amazing detail on why.
Yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent.
No. It was great. I think having that, I think you had a ton of illustrations. So for people who are completely new to the sport, high value. People who've been in the game, high value. It's explain like I'm five kind of thing. If you can talk about it in very foundational principles, simple language, people get it. But the thing that I pulled out that I think is like the biggest philosophy, and you look at me, or I'm going to speak like me being like a perpetual learner in the space. The biggest arc was going from like, okay, like I want to make my marketing look really good to I want my business to work really well. Like I want to like grow my business. And that's ultimately what matters. Like I want to be able to pay my employees well. I want to be able to generate profits. I want to be able to grow year over year. Like those are the big things. Yeah. And I think that's like the ultimate philosophy of what you're talking about, what you're describing. It's remove the ego from like the marketing, like minutia, like myopic view, like worldview, and expand to look at it like from how does this impact my business? And one of the things that I know that you have a course on at Disruptor School is the profit scaling margin, right?
Yeah.
The PSM. So can you talk us a little bit through PSM, and then kind of some of the resources that you provide to your students in terms of understanding that, and then actually like actionizing PSM to actually scale?
Yeah. So PSM, for what it's worth, is also the metric that I use and I've been using to scale 8 and 9 figure businesses, SaaS, lead gen agencies, direct to consumer for years. And unlike ROAS and MER and contribution margin and all of these other ego-focused agendas pushed by people that either don't care about you or don't know what they're talking about, PSM, on the other hand, prioritizes the business objective, which is ultimately, at its core, the reason most people run businesses is to solve a problem or to generate revenue. But like running a good business provides opportunity, right? So how do we create opportunity to, give people the chance to make their lives better? Like that's where I'm coming from. So that's the ultimate ethos of this whole thing. PSM answers a single question, which is actionable, unlike ROAS and MER, which have no actionability to them, which is how much more money could I spend per transaction on the acquisition of revenue? So basically, that's the problem we're trying to solve, is how much more could I invest per acquisition of revenue instance, right? So that's the number one thing. And so that equation, very simply put, is LTV, lifetime value, how much a customer is ultimately worth over their time with you as a business, divided by the sum of cost per acquisition of revenue and COGS. And to get a little bit more clever, multiply that by the number of transactions the average person takes. So let's go through an example of this. So let's say, my women's clothing business. These aren't real numbers, but let's just use a real world example, because I did use this to fundamentally take this from 50K a month to $1 million a week. And I'm on a team of like 6 or 7 people. By no means am I the only person involved, but hey, this equation unlocked a lot of growth, and it has for many, many people around the world on, 6 continents. Don't have any students in Antarctica yet. Maybe 2023 will make that happen. We'll see. The point is, let's say my average customer, LTV, based on this one SKU, the first SKU that somebody buys. It's also cohort analysis to like a certain first product, because whatever somebody buys from you the first time influences how they deal with you in your business later on. If somebody goes to McDonald's and they buy fries, they might be very different than somebody that goes and buys something else. And some brands are much more rich in their nature, it doesn't really matter on the first SKU. Other brands are extraordinarily dependent. Like if you spend, one product has a much greater LTV than another one. Most brands, that first transaction, that first impression you have, just like anything else in the world, that first impression means everything. So let's say you come and buy the Comfort Shaping Bra, and you buy one. Let's say that average customer is worth $200. Now, let's say for the purpose of this conversation, the average person that comes to the store makes 3 transactions to that LTV of $200. Okay. Now, let's say blended CPA across the board, including all returning customers, new customers, people coming through email, search, organic, whatever it is, because attribution doesn't matter, we're just saying total money out, total transaction volume in, blended across, a nice trend and a good bit of data, says $30. Okay. And let's say my COGS to deliver that order, overhead, whatever it takes, money for me to make that transaction to get you that product is 10. All right. So we have $200 divided by 30 plus 10, so that's 40, times 3, because 3 transactions. So now we have 200 divided by 120. And that basically tells me how much more money I could be spending for the acquisition of any sale in that customer journey. Understanding that not any day I might have 80% of sales are new customers or 10% are new customers. Maybe I have a big sale for all repeat customers. And that's one reason the MER is complete nonsense, because you have no idea what mixture of that revenue in that time period is maturing customer journeys or brand new customer journeys. You have no idea how much, and many of those people took a discount, or you had to pay a lot of money to get. There's no concept of any of that. And because you can't control for it, that number doesn't mean anything. Instead, when we're looking at just blended CPA, we don't care because we don't have control over it. So we're only looking at things we have control over. What this means ultimately is I have effectively identified that I could spend, what is that number? 200 divided by 120 is what, like 1.8, something like that? 1.5? 1.67. Okay, I was close. I was doing the number in my I should probably have this figured out, but I was just doing it in my head. 1.67. So that means I could spend 67.5% more money at my CPA before I break even on that customer journey. Now, ultimately what that tells me is that's how much more money I can spend for the acquisition of any journey. So if I go to Facebook and I want to spend 5% more this week, I can do it. And if my Facebook account is simple enough where I'm not trying to control for the customer journey, but it's all broken down to, say, one ad account, like most of my ad accounts are run like this is, by the way, this is how I run my entire Facebook ad account. Let's see if this will track. This is my account structure. 1 winning ad set of some winning ads, 2 dynamic creatives to improve ads towards that thing. I run $1 million a week on this account structure. That's the goal. Because I'm leveraging machine learning, artificial intelligence, and the scientific method. Works for some people. Other people don't like the scientific method. Generally, we call those people losers in history. And my point to that is, if I know I can spend 2% more on that campaign each week, or on my ad account each week, 2% more each week is 3x a year. If I'm a $3 million business and I can do 2% a week, I could be a $10 million business, because maybe a couple of weeks I can do 5. What if I do 5% a week? What if I can do that twice? Now I'm sitting in a spot where I can take a $2,000 a day ad spend and make it a $100,000 a day ad spend. And a year and a half, because now I understand future cash flow. I understand inventory management. I understand COGS. I understand cash flow cadence, and my entire marketing ecosystem is baked down to only things that I can control, leveraged against numbers that I have super high confidence in. So if I figure out PSM as a Facebook media buyer, I've effectively installed myself as a CMO, because I understand the numbers that matter. And now I can also strategically look at, well, how many products am I offering? Well, you might say, well, we sell 3 or 4 products on our Facebook ads. My answer is why? That's objectively a bad idea, because say one of them has this margin of 67% and another one has a margin of 10. Let's say one of them, let's break it down another way. Let's say one of them makes you 25 cents profit for every dollar that you spend. Another makes you 50 cents and another makes you 5 cents. Every time you make a sale at that 5 cents, you could have invested in the acquisition of 50 cents. So it costs you money to make that 5. You say, well, they're all profitable. Yeah, but you're stepping over 45 cents to pick up every nickel. Now, to be fair, maybe you can do 20 times the volume at the thing that you get a 5 cent profit versus a 50 cent profit. And this is where I see a lot of people pushing high ROAS and their business is effectively failing because they're going for the biggest profit margin per transaction when really they have a volume problem. Like if you can make 5%, if you can make 5 cents and do it 20 times more often than the 50 cents, you're making twice as much money. So PSM lets you figure that out and then ultimately identify all the liabilities in your business. And any liability, what I'm talking about here is anything that destabilizes any of those numbers and any of the investments that aren't best for your business model. So if you're insisting on doing a bunch of creative testing, that's a liability. Like, why are you doing a bunch of creative testing? Why are you trying to attract different types of customers into your store? If you already know the types of customers and how they behave, why not just go get more of those? We already know we can spend more money on them. So like if you have a store, if you're Hot Topic or, you know, like if you're selling a bunch of like punk rock merchandise, why am I going to go out there and then try to sell cardigans? That makes no sense. But somebody's told you, well, I got to do creative testing all the time. So I'm going to try to get the attention of somebody else. And to be fair, you could extrapolate the same thing out to landing pages and email design. There's some impact to that stuff. And I look at a landing page as my store layout. Like if I know when a customer comes into my store exactly how they're going to navigate through each aisle and I'm profitable and my biggest problem is I'm not spending enough, why am I going to change my store layout? That's the dumbest thing I could ever do. But you see so many people say, well, we're going to do a bunch of creative testing. We're doing a bunch of audience testing. So not only are we going to change our messaging, we're also going to try to talk to different people and we're going to change our store layout. And we're going to promote like 5 different products. And my point to them is you have no idea what you're doing. Like you might be very smart, but there's no way to quantify the impact of literally anything that's going on. And maybe the reason you're struggling is because there's no ability to look at any data and make any decision that has any value. So PSM solves all of that in a very clean and easy way. And people are like, well, how do I figure out LTV? Simple. Revenue divided by customers. LTV. Done. How do I figure out total number of transactions per customer? How many orders do you have? How many customers do you have? Done. Doesn't need to be more complicated than that. You can choose to make it more complicated if you want a better answer, but like, do I need really expensive software to tell me I sold $500,000 of things and I had 5,000 customers, so this is how much each customer is worth? No. 500,000 divided by 5,000 is 100. Done. That's your LTV. Got it. Let's move on to the next problem. Like I solved that in 3 seconds. I don't need to spend $3,000 on software. So my point is, that's the masterclass on PSM, and there's a whole working flow document. And if you go into there's literally like we screen share through real life things, and there's a calculator in there, and we have to walk through each of these steps so you can map out future projections for like 30, 40 weeks. And Disruptor School is basically built around the idea of, you know, I've been a part of 7, 8, 9-figure businesses for the better part of a decade. And a couple 10 or 11-figure businesses like Apple, no small potatoes. Nissan, kind of successful. There's a way that the vast majority of these super successful brands run. And there's frameworks, effectively worksheets that they use to make sure that we don't rely on the employee to be successful. You know, I think I told you this, like a 16-year-old kid can manage a McDonald's location that does $1 million a year in revenue. Does it mean the 16-year-old kid is good as a manager? No. It means the McDonald's is really good at installing a system that means that kid is irreplaceable. Why aren't you that simple? What's wrong with your business that's preventing you from seeing that level of success? Why can't an entry-level employee with no skills help you be a 7-figure business on basically autopilot? Let's fix that. Because that's not difficult to fix. It's just people have taught you to value the wrong things. And at the end of the day, most people make one of 3 big errors. And generally they make 2 or 3 of them. They ask the wrong questions. For instance, like, what's my ROAS? That's the wrong question. Or they value the wrong metrics. Like they're trying to look at conversion rate or click-through rate on a Facebook ad. That doesn't mean anything. People are like, well, good click-through rate means it's a good ad. No, it just means you didn't show your ad to enough people. I want a low click-through rate because that means my CPM is probably lower. If my denominator grows faster than my numerator, my rate is going to go down. But if my numerator grows at all and my spend doesn't, I'm doing a better job. So if I can reach 5,000 people instead of 3,000 and I get 15 clicks instead of 10 for the same amount of money, my CTR is going to look worse, but I'm going to make more money. So they're valuing the wrong metrics because they've been taught to by people that don't know how Facebook works or how businesses work. And lastly, and you know, some of the biggest issues, like I said, is they're asking the wrong questions, they're valuing the wrong metrics, or what I see often is they define success in the wrong way. They say, well, what I need to do is spend X amount of money at X ROAS, or we need to acquire customers at whatever it is. And the honest truth is, your definition of success is ultimately the ceiling that's holding you back. 99% of times. You know, I use this because it means so much as an example of this. You know, in ancient Greece, there was a battle. And at the end of the battle, a soldier ran roughly the equivalent of 26 miles from the city of Marathon. And from that time, people tried to run that distance. And ultimately, it got down to like, how fast could somebody run a mile? For 2,000 years, nobody could do it under 4 minutes. Nerd, like a mathematician who was kind of out of shape on a windy day with a slight rain, did it. It took, in like the 30s, it took like 45 days for the second person to do it. Because all you had to do was know that it was possible. And you see these kind of breakthroughs occur everywhere. Like the invention of the written language basically pops up at the same time everywhere in the world. And you see these types of things happen. And so my point is, if your definition of success is wrong, you're never going to achieve the success that you deserve, which ultimately means you're not able to provide nearly as much opportunity for other people as you possibly could. And you're probably way more stressed out than you should be. And so Disruptor School is basically myself and a lot of the people that I've worked with and trust who are experts in their field, teaching you these things in their way to basically say, how do we unlock just the next step for you? And we have that in masterclasses, we have that in ebooks, and there's some courses. And you know, the best bang for your buck at Disruptor School, you just have a monthly enrollment. And you have unlimited access to all the ebooks, unlimited access to all the masterclasses. There's 3 classes a week, including a live session with me or somebody else where we're literally diving into the back ends of businesses. We're doing the work with you. It's over the shoulder or literally screen share, do for you work. And because of the open kimono learning environment where it's you and other people, you get to understand how other people are asking the question. And you get a context to the framework. And as a result, the students at Disruptor School, we've got multiple 7, 8-figure exits. We've got some, equity deals. We've got people that, like one of my students, this guy Jared, came in and he was like a graphic designer that was as a creative director, couldn't pass a certain paycheck. 2 years later, he's making 3-4 times that. And if the surf is good, he tells everybody on his calendar to F off because he's going to go to the beach and he's going to hire his brother and it's just one of dozens and dozens and dozens of people. And my goal ultimately is, I remember being unemployable. I have 11 years, almost 11 years sober now, but I remember not being able to make the decision between, heroin and food. And I remember at my first job where I was the supervisor at Omnicom, I went to my boss for help and she took out her headphones and told me to check my job description and put her headphone back in. And I realized now that she had no idea the answer because nobody did. But the point is, there's so much bad information out there. There's so much of this, there's an overwhelming majority of people that just got lucky in a bull market that are really good at marketing themselves. And I see these folks that are Well, they're not good enough at any one skill to make things work for them. So instead of trying to teach you one thing poorly, they're going to package up like 5 or 6 things that they're absolute dog shit at and sell it to you for like $10,000, $12,000. Or like, and there's just, to be fair, almost all of them are these like fake, like alpha male white dudes and their toxic insecurity and masculinity. And it's like, you can pick them out in the crowd, right? They're the like monochrome, like sweatshirt wearing dude that brags about cold showers and running a marathon before breakfast and like starving themselves in their bank account. And they talk about, well, I got into Facebook ads 5 years ago and I've given a couple million because my agency, this, that. Like, okay, so you got lucky by like your position at birth and then got into a situation during a bull market where literally a picture of a brick could make somebody $1 million, and then landed some clients who don't need you. And now, because you're not good enough at selling one thing, you're going to try to help me be an expert in everything? Like, I don't want to be the best person at the ER. I want to be the brain surgeon. I want to be the cardiologist, the person that works higher stress situations, but makes way more money, doesn't work nearly as hard. Like, specialization is important. And if I genuinely want to be good at my job, the number one thing I don't want to do is have to learn 5 other jobs that aren't nearly as akin to what I'm doing. So that kind of stuff just keeps me up at night. And I just try, like, I'm motivated. Like, I think you've asked me 5 questions and I've talked for an hour and a half. Like, this is just who I am. And I genuinely enjoy it because I see the light bulbs every day. And every single day I dive into like students' ad accounts and their businesses. And every single day, I'm dealing with the damage that is done by these people who on Instagram or Twitter or like at some convention are the person on stage and repairing the damage that they do on a daily basis. And when I'm talking about them, like, I don't call them out specifically, but like, I know I used to, which is why I was really heavily blocked on Twitter. But like, I know how they run their businesses. Like, I know what they're doing wrong because I fix their problem over and over and over again. And I see the either ignorance or lies that they preach every single day. And there should be somebody out there, you know, in a world full of snake oil salesmen selling jalopies out of used car lots for wildly inflated prices. You could just be a decent human being and pay your bills. And like, why not just do that? So like, I'm in a niche where literally all I have to do is help people be successful and pass things along for the Hank Azaria rate of like wildly less than I'm worth. And hey man, like I used to have to make decisions between food and dope. And I'm about to buy like my second house in Manhattan. Like, it is dumb. And I get that, like, I'm a white dude from suburbia saying that shit. So like calling myself out, but that doesn't mean that the message I try to get across to be helpful doesn't have value. And if I can give somebody the lessons I've gotten from my privilege so that they can also tap into it, man, I got a smile on my face like 23 hours a day. Like, it's a beautiful place, man. So like I said, any opportunity I get to talk about it, I'll take. And I think I talked about 97 minutes out of 108 and I appreciate it.
Dude, of course. We got 2 final questions and they'll be rapid fire.
All right, rapid fire. I'm going to set a timer on my phone to 1 minute. So shut up. Hold on a second.
So, no, all good, man.
Here we go. Hold on a second. Timer, 0 hours. 1 minute. All right, I'm going to hit this button when you stop asking, and I'll shut up when it's done. I love it.
Perfect.
Let's go.
All right, so question number 1 is about professional stuff, and it is, what's next for you? What's next for Disruptor School? What can people look forward to this year?
Boom. Love it. I hit stop. Resume. Okay, so next for me, the biggest thing is I'm actually opening up Disruptor School India in the next week, and then also South America, with basically my focus being, how do I make sure that people that aren't in native English-speaking countries have access to the U.S. economy? How do we provide opportunities for them? Because the honest truth is they'll do better work for money that they should be paid U.S. dollars for and put out of business all of these just like insecure bros that are doing damage left, right, and center. And like,
to be fair, India's a billion people. If I can get 1,000 people to buy something for like $300-400 to help them build generational wealth, I'm going to be great. And they're going to be great. And why not do that? So like, I'm going to be focusing on that. And then also just as much as I can, getting on as many of these things as possible to get the message out, and then find more instructors so that I can provide this opportunity to them to build out the curriculum. So I have a well-rounded, vertically integrated offering to help people solve their problems so they can see more success and less stress. And honestly, have the happiness they deserve.
Hell yeah. Okay. Final question.
All right.
If you, and this is a personal question, if you could go back to the start of your career, knowing what you know now, what's the one thing you tell your younger self?
All right, question. I love it. So the honest truth is, and maybe this is a hackney answer, I don't know. I wouldn't say anything. I'm a big believer that the difficulties that we go through and the opportunities that we go through craft us as people. And to go back and say, I would love to go back to myself 10 years ago and give him this piece of advice, basically says, I'm not happy with myself today. And if I had done something differently, I think I'd be in a better place. But the honest truth is, I'm happy. Like, I'm not hungry. My bills are paid. I got a beautiful wife. I got a house. I got 2 dogs. Like, life is good. And I get to spend my days providing opportunity for other people. So I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't change anything. I'm stoked.
That's amazing. All right. There, perfect time, man. All right, dude, you have been amazing. I love the energy and the enthusiasm and the intensity that you brought to this, but also what you have to serving people in the community, educating people, and the message universally being like, the opportunity exists, anyone can get it. And that you are one of the many champions of helping people get that through Disruptor School, through all the work that you do. So grateful for you jumping on the pod. We're definitely going to do this another time. I hope to see you again soon in person. Meeting you last week was serendipity and just a ton of fun. Like it was fantastic. So thank you so much, brother, for coming on. And I can't wait to talk to you again.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much, dude. I appreciate it, dude. This was fun.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And we shall see you again soon on Design to Convert. Make sure you give us a little thumbs up. Follow us on Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe, like, notification button, all the
there you go. Ring the bell, hit the like button aggressively with passion, ask questions, tell me all the things I got wrong in the comment section, tag me so I can like have a conversation with you. If you can make me better by telling where I'm wrong, believe me, that's all I want in the world. So
that's what's up.
This was fun, dude. Thank you so much. Yeah.
You bet. Make sure to check out Disruptor School as well, and we shall see you next time on Design to Convert.